In the final season of the show, Undercover Boss, Mr. Alexander Hayes, CEO of Brightline Systems, one of the largest electrical and telecommunications construction companies in North America, decided to undertake an unprecedented action, to go undercover and participate in the daily work of his employees. He wanted to explore a world he had never directly been a part of, to better understand the challenges his employees face, and to test if he had the strength to work directly with construction workers in such a harsh environment. I am Alexander Hayes, CEO of Brightline Systems. I have led this company through tough times and helped it grow, but I've never truly understood the challenges that my employees face daily. So I've decided to go undercover and work with them. I want to know if I have what it takes to work on the front lines like they do. Mr. Hayes was not just a talented CEO, but also a native of the city where his company was based. For many years, he had been the leader, making strategic decisions that guided the company's growth. However, with a large company like Brightline Systems, Alexander couldn't always be close to the workers and couldn't directly know what they were doing in their daily jobs. Today, he decided to disguise himself as Manny Lewis, an ordinary man recently fired from his job as a high school sports coach and now seeking new career opportunities. He was informed that he would participate in a reality program called Second Chances, where people who had lost their jobs would be given the opportunity to try their hand at an entirely new profession. However, Alexander wasn't just participating in the program as a contestant. He had a bigger goal: to understand the work of the construction workers and laborers at his company, to improve the work environment, increase productivity, and create real change. Manny, I don't know if you have what it takes to do this job, but I'll help you. Remember, this work is not easy. You'll be dealing with heavy equipment, facing dangers, and making sure the job gets done on time, David, the team leader, told Manny, who still didn't know that he was talking to the CEO of the company. Today was Manny's first day, and his first task was to work with a crew on a high-voltage electrical line construction project. Tasked with inspecting equipment and ensuring that everything went smoothly, Manny immediately felt the difficulty and stress of the job. He began to familiarize himself with the heavy tools, electrical cables, and the constant threats of danger. This doesn't feel like managing from the office, Manny thought to himself as he struggled to pull a heavy electrical cable, worried about his safety. Every step has to be careful. I have to be strong to do this job. However, it was his weakness and unfamiliarity with the work that made Manny stand out to the other workers. They couldn't imagine that this man was the CEO of the company. They thought he was just a newbie, a contestant in the reality show, and no one knew that the man standing before them was the one who ran the entire company. You need to be tougher, work faster. You can't be this slow, David, the team leader, reminded him when he saw Manny working too slowly. The nerves and stress made Manny realize that this job required not just strength but also quick thinking and good teamwork skills. Manny began to understand that each employee in the company faced their own unique challenges. They didn't just work for the paycheck. They worked out of passion and commitment to the company. This job is going to change me. I need to learn from them, not just about skills, but about how to live and work. At the end of the first day, Manny was not only physically exhausted, but also mentally drained. He knew he would have to work even harder if he wanted to understand what was really happening in the company and whether he could make a difference. I won't let anyone down. I have to finish this job, not just for the company, but for all the people working here, Manny thought to himself, ready for the next challenges ahead. The next day, Manny continued to participate in the work of the construction crew, and he began to feel the tension in the work environment more clearly. The tasks he had to perform were not only physically demanding, but also mentally challenging. He realized that this was not a job anyone could do easily, especially when working in dangerous and harsh conditions. David, the team leader, assigned Manny a new task: pulling huge electrical cables and connecting them. This job required physical strength, intense focus, and skillful handling of complex wiring. Manny felt overwhelmed, but also understood that this was an opportunity for him to learn more about the work of the employees and how they maintained safety in such a challenging work environment. As work continued, Manny began to notice some of the workers around him, particularly Tony, a longtime employee of the company. Tony was one of the leaders of the crew but was quite silent, often staring into the distance with a worried expression. Manny realized that he wasn't the only one feeling the stress. Something seemed to be bothering Tony as well. Manny decided to approach Tony during a short break to talk and understand more about his work. Tony didn't hide his exhaustion and stress. "This job is really tough, especially when you have a family and you're worried about the future," Tony sighed, his voice heavy with sadness. "We work hard, but sometimes it feels like we don't get the recognition we deserve. The company doesn't provide enough tools, and we don't even have good insurance policies. A small mistake can lead to consequences for the whole team." Manny was surprised by these words, and they only made him more concerned. He knew the company had grown strong in recent years, but why did the workers feel unprotected? Were they lacking support from the company? This question lingered in Manny's mind throughout the next workday. Although he couldn't fully express his concerns, Manny realized more than ever that he needed to understand the issues his workers were facing. He decided that he would not only work alongside them, but also try to understand the concerns and shortcomings they were experiencing. Manny also noticed that, despite the hard work, the workers still showed determination and unity in their tasks. However, the lack of proper tools and unclear policies regarding bonuses and insurance made them feel insecure. He felt that he needed to find a way to better support them. Manny continued working through the next few days, constantly trying to improve his skills and learn more about the challenges the workers were facing. The anxiety and unease inside him grew stronger, and he knew this was the time to find a way to make changes to help those who had contributed to the company's success. After several challenging and tiring days at work, Manny began to feel more familiar with the tasks and the environment around him. Though he still had feelings of anxiety and insecurity, he felt he was slowly integrating into the daily lives of the workers. However, one thing Manny clearly noticed was that, despite the company's growth and increasing profits, the frontline workers still felt neglected and undervalued. This feeling became even more evident through the stories shared by Tony and some other workers about the difficulties they faced in their work. Manny decided that he needed to delve deeper into this situation. He began to proactively engage with other workers, trying to understand them better and build closer relationships. One afternoon, after completing the task of pulling cables and connecting them, he sat down with Alex, an experienced worker, and they chatted about the challenges they faced at work. Alex was always positive, but when Manny asked about the issues within the company, he couldn't hide the disappointment in his eyes. "I've been working here for almost 10 years, Alex said, rubbing his stomach while looking off into the distance. "In the beginning, everything was fine, but now it's different. We're always facing difficulties, not just with the job, but because the company doesn't invest in proper tools, not to mention bonuses and insurance. We work our butts off, but no one gives us the proper recognition." Listening to these words, Manny began to realize that the issues the workers were facing weren't just trivial matters. These were serious concerns that affected their morale and productivity. However, Manny didn't just stop at listening. He decided to investigate the company's policies and the solutions that had been implemented over the years. The following day, while working with the team on electrical equipment, Manny approached Wendy, a female worker on the team. Wendy was highly experienced but didn't receive much attention. Manny asked her about the job and the challenges she encountered, and her answer made him reflect deeply. "We never have enough tools to work with," Wendy shared, her eyes filled with sadness. "The company says they'll provide us, but the reality is, we have to buy our own tools. You can't work effectively without the right equipment, and if the company doesn't support us enough for these dangerous jobs, we'll be held accountable for any incidents. It's a very unsettling feeling." Wendy's words made Manny more aware of the company's shortcomings. He felt an unease not just about the work, but also about the relationship between the company and its workers. The company may have grown, but if it didn't improve the work environment and basic conditions like tools, recognition, and employee protection, everything would eventually fall apart. After these conversations, Manny decided that he wouldn't just focus on working and learning from the workers. He would also find ways to address these issues. He was determined to investigate the company's policies further and reassess the insurance, compensation, and reward systems to bring about positive changes. Day by day, Manny felt more connected to the workers, and he could feel the insecurity they were experiencing in their work. The sense of responsibility grew stronger, and he knew that his mission wasn't just to change the way work was done, but also to improve their living conditions. His empathy and determination to help motivated him to make the necessary changes within the company, not only to boost revenue, but also to make the workers feel safer and more respected. "I'll find a way to improve this situation. The company must change to ensure that workers get the protection and recognition they deserve," Manny thought to himself, ready to face the challenges ahead. After a week of relentless work and numerous challenges, Manny began to experience a significant shift in his perspective on both the job and his employees. Although he still wasn't fully accustomed to the tough construction work environment, he increasingly felt the weight of the pressures the workers faced every day. They didn't just work with heavy equipment, but also endured injustice and lack of resources. Every complaint he heard made him feel more responsible for making a change in the situation. One day, while working with David and the crew, Manny began to notice the growing tension in the workers' eyes. They didn't speak of it, but their exhaustion and worry were evident on their faces. During a break, Manny decided to approach David, the team leader he trusted, to ask about the situation within the group. "David, I feel like there's something causing tension among the team." "Is this job too difficult?" Manny asked gently, trying to make him feel comfortable without adding pressure. David looked at him for a moment before sighing. "The work isn't hard, but sometimes we feel like we're not being recognized for what we do. We work hard, and what we need isn't praise, but real support from the company." Manny nodded, trying to listen and understand what David was saying. "We don't have enough tools. Sometimes we have to buy our own gear. Without the right equipment, we can't do the job efficiently, but the company doesn't support us." David's words struck Manny deeply. He realized that the company wasn't just lacking in tools, but also in long-term strategies to support its employees. This shortage not only made the workers feel insecure in their jobs, but also diminished their connection with the company. This was a significant issue that he could no longer overlook. "We need change," Manny said, his gaze firm. "I can't ignore this. I will do everything I can to improve the situation." Over the next few days, Manny continued to observe and take note of every issue he saw within the company. He spoke with many other workers, and their stories shared a common theme: a lack of tools, an unsafe working environment, and unfairness in career advancement. They weren't receiving the proper benefits, despite the company's growing success. One afternoon, after finishing a stressful task with the team, Manny decided to meet Wendy, a longtime employee whom he deeply respected. Wendy was one of the people who always tried to maintain her work but seemed to be facing her own struggles. "Wendy, I see that you're very dedicated to your work, but I sense that something is bothering you. Is the job too demanding for you?" Manny asked. Wendy looked at him, her eyes tired but full of understanding. "The job isn't the problem. What bothers me is the lack of recognition from the company. We work hard, but often no one notices." "What would you like to change?" Manny asked. Wendy hesitated for a moment before replying, "We need better protection, proper tools that meet standards, and a fair reward system. If the company really cared about us, we would give our all." Wendy's words made Manny even more determined. He knew that this was the time to address the injustices within the company, and he would not let his employees suffer any longer. At the end of the day, Manny returned to his break room, exhausted, but filled with thoughts. He knew he had to do something to improve the lives and work of those who had contributed to the success of Brightline Systems. The growing sense of responsibility within him was undeniable, and he was ready to take the next steps. After several days of hard work and listening to emotional stories from the workers, Manny realized that the issues in the company were not simply about a lack of tools or unfair reward policies. Everything went much deeper. He felt the need to understand more about the company's internal policies and the difficulties employees faced, especially when they had to work in dangerous and resource-poor conditions. In the following days, Manny decided to shadow some of the workers in their daily tasks to see how they dealt with these challenges. He also paid attention to the working conditions at the projects the company was running. One day, while working with the team on a high-voltage power line project. Manny couldn't help but feel concerned when he saw the workers without the proper safety gear, sometimes working without the appropriate tools. Manny decided to speak with David, the team leader, to learn more. "David, I've noticed that the work is getting harder. The workers don't have enough protective gear and proper tools. Does the company have any plans to improve this situation?" Manny asked, his voice full of concern. David sighed, looking around before responding. "The company doesn't provide enough tools for us. We have to buy our own gear, and we aren't even given proper safety suits. And there's no adequate insurance policy. A small mistake could lead to a serious accident, and at that point, we don't know where to turn for help." Manny felt even more worried after hearing this. He couldn't believe that a big company like Brightline Systems didn't ensure these basic conditions for its workers. He knew he had to dig deeper into the issue and find a way to make a change. To do that, he needed to better understand the company's policies and the decisions made by the leadership, as well as how the company was handling safety and insurance issues. Manny continued working with the team for the next few days. He felt more and more the inadequacies in the system and the insecurity the workers were experiencing. Once again, he decided to approach Wendy to ask more about the real situation. "Wendy, I can't help but notice the shortages at work. Have you all been enduring this for a long time?" Manny asked, his voice softer. "Yes, that's right," Wendy replied, her eyes filled with sadness. "We work our hardest, but we don't get the protection we deserve. We have to take care of ourselves while the company doesn't provide enough. Sometimes I wonder if the company really cares about us." Manny didn't know what to say. He felt the weight of his responsibility growing as he realized the daily struggles the workers faced. Wendy, David, and the other workers' stories made him see that, although the company was thriving, if it didn't change its policies on insurance, tools, and worker benefits, it wouldn't be able to retain its dedicated and skilled employees. One morning, after talking to the workers, Manny decided he would meet with Jose, the head of the company's HR department. He wanted to understand why the company was facing such serious issues with insurance and tools. Jose explained that the company was currently focusing on expanding and improving other areas, and these issues hadn't received the proper attention. However, he couldn't deny that the company needed to improve its employee benefits and support. "Jose, I think it's time for the company to change its approach. The company can't grow successfully if we don't keep the connection with the frontline employees. We need to change to ensure they feel protected and properly valued," Manny said, his voice full of resolve. Jose nodded, but also recognized that it wouldn't be easy to change policies that had been in place for so long. However, he understood the urgency to make immediate changes. "I understand, Manny. We will need to review all the policies and figure out how to improve them." Manny knew he had to act immediately. He was determined to do everything he could to change this situation, and he wouldn't let his valued workers suffer any longer. From there, Manny continued to investigate and gather information to prepare for the significant changes he wanted to implement within the company. After a week of intense and challenging work, Manny felt that he had learned a lot from the workers at Brightline Systems. He had witnessed the difficulties they faced, and their stories had given him a deeper sense of responsibility. Specifically, he couldn't forget the conversations he had with David, Tony, Wendy, and the other workers about the company's shortcomings, from the lack of tools to the unfair policies surrounding insurance and bonuses. These issues made Manny realize that he couldn't stay on the sidelines any longer. He needed to take action. Over the past few days, Manny had gradually developed a deep connection with the workers. They were not just employees of the company, but real people with lives, families, and individual concerns. Manny decided that he had to do something to support them, not just materially, but also emotionally. He couldn't let them continue working under such insufficient conditions. One afternoon, while working alongside David and the crew, Manny felt that the time had come to reveal the truth to them. He knew that disclosing his true identity would surprise them, but he also understood that this was an important step to create real change within the company. He decided not to let them continue working without knowing the care and determination the leadership had toward improving their situation. "David," Manny began, his voice unfamiliar yet sincere. "I'm not Manny. I'm actually Alexander Hayes, the CEO of Brightline Systems. A long silence filled the air. The workers looked at each other, stunned and unable to believe what they had just heard. David and the other team members couldn't fathom that the person they had worked alongside throughout the week was the CEO of the company. Manny, or rather Alexander, looked at them, sighed, and added, "I know you might not believe what I'm saying, but I want you to understand that I've witnessed what you're going through. I've heard your stories, and I feel responsible for making changes." David's expression softened, and a few other workers began to relax. They couldn't have imagined that the head of the company would take the time to truly understand and care about the issues they were facing. "Alexander, I don't know what to say," David replied, his voice lower now. "We never expected you to be the head of the company. We thought we were just anonymous workers, spending our days laboring without receiving attention or support." Manny, now Alexander, looked at the workers, his gaze full of sincerity. "I understand, and I apologize for not showing concern earlier, but I'm here now to make a change. You deserve better working conditions, the right tools, and protection from the company. I promise I'll do everything I can to improve this." A noticeable shift in mood occurred among the workers. They no longer felt anxious or uncertain, but instead began to feel trust in Alexander. They realized that this was not a joke or a challenge from a reality show. Alexander truly cared about them, and he was willing to change everything so they could work under better conditions. "Thank you, Alexander," David said, his eyes welling with tears. "We feel like we're being recognized now, no longer forgotten. This really means a lot to us. And I thank you for taking the time to share your struggles with me. I'll do everything I can to help you so we can build a better company, not just financially, but for the people," Alexander replied. After this conversation, Alexander knew he had created a turning point within the company. He had not only listened, but also made real changes for the workers who had given their all to the company. Their stories had touched his heart and made him realize that the company needed to grow not just in revenue, but also in the human values it upheld. "I won't let you down. I promise to do everything I can to make this company a place where everyone feels safe and respected," Alexander thought to himself, ready to face the significant changes that lay ahead for the company. After the emotional conversation with the workers, Alexander felt that the time to act had come. His promises could no longer be just about listening. He had to create visible and tangible change. He couldn't let his employees continue to suffer under conditions that didn't match the effort and sacrifice they put in. The company needed to improve, not just financially, but in terms of protecting and supporting its employees. The next morning, Alexander held an internal meeting with the company's leadership to discuss the issues he had witnessed over the past weeks. He began by presenting the company's shortcomings, particularly in terms of labor tools, insurance policies, and bonuses for the frontline workers. "We can't continue to have our employees working under these conditions. The company needs to provide adequate tools, better insurance, and a fair reward system. We need to change so that the company is truly a place where every employee feels cared for and respected," Alexander said, his voice filled with determination. The meeting lasted several hours, and in the end, Alexander successfully convinced the leadership to implement the necessary changes. The company would invest in providing workers with the proper tools, improve health insurance and benefits, and revise the bonus policies to motivate employees. These steps would improve the working environment and restore the workers' trust in the company. As soon as the meeting ended, Alexander decided to meet with David, Tony, Wendy, and some other workers to share the reform plan with them. He wanted them to know that these changes were not just empty promises, but concrete steps to ensure they would have safer and more deserving jobs. "David, Tony, Wendy," Alexander began, his gaze focused on each of them. "I want you to know that I've decided to improve your working environment. The company will provide full labor tools and insurance for all workers. We will also adjust the bonus policies to ensure that you are recognized and valued for your hard work." David looked at him, his expression no longer filled with doubt but with deep appreciation. "This is amazing. We've been waiting for this for a long time. Thank you so much, Alexander. If the company truly does this, we'll feel more valued." Tony also nodded in agreement. Thank you for listening and doing what's best for us. This really means a lot to us." Wendy smiled, for the first time throughout her work, feeling a renewed sense of trust in the company. "We know the company can thrive, but if there's no care for the people, all that success would mean nothing. You did the right thing, and I'm so grateful for that." Alexander felt a sense of relief and happiness hearing these words. He knew that these changes wouldn't just help the company grow sustainably, but also create a better working environment for all the workers. However, Alexander didn't stop there. He decided to meet with workers from other departments to ensure these changes would be implemented correctly. He visited construction sites, checked the labor tools, and personally spoke with workers about what they needed to improve in their jobs. Alexander wanted to make sure that every employee in the company felt supported and recognized by the company. A month later, Manny, or rather Alexander, decided to take another big step. He wanted to create a scholarship fund for employees and their families, particularly those facing difficult circumstances and wishing to continue their education to improve their lives. Alexander knew that education was the key to changing lives, and he wanted to ensure that workers like David, Tony, and Wendy would have better opportunities for their children. "I want to create a scholarship fund to help the families of our employees access better education," Alexander said when discussing with David. "We need to help each other in the hardest times, and I believe this scholarship fund will create a brighter future for the families in the company." David was moved by Alexander's idea. "You're doing the right thing. We can help the next generation, and this is the way we build a solid future for the company." Alexander felt very proud of the changes he had made. He knew that the company's success wasn't just about revenue, but about caring for and investing in its people. These changes not only helped the company grow, but also created a strong, connected working community where everyone felt valued and respected. After a journey filled with challenges, stress, and unexpected moments, Alexander felt that he truly understood what his workers went through each day. The company had grown, but he knew that the true strength of Brightline Systems lay in the dedicated individuals behind its success. The stories of David, Tony, Wendy, and many other employees had changed Alexander's perspective on leadership. He realized that for the company to achieve success, it needed to not only thrive financially, but also build a strong and humane community. On the last day of his undercover journey, Alexander decided to meet with the workers he had been working with throughout the week. He wanted to not only reveal his true identity, but also share the important decisions the company would be making to improve the working environment. He organized a meeting at the Freedom Tower, a place that held special meaning for him, tied to his father's immigrant journey and the new opportunities people sought in America. It symbolized the unwavering efforts and perseverance of his family. "Hello, everyone. I'm Alexander Hayes, CEO of Brightline Systems," Alexander began, standing before the group of workers he had been working with for the past week. The group was stunned when they heard the revelation. They couldn't believe that the man they had been working with was the CEO of the company. "Thank you for sharing your stories with me. I have learned so much from you, and I am committed to addressing the issues you've been facing." David looked at him, his eyes filled with astonishment. "You're the CEO? I can't believe it. You've helped us so much over the past week, but now, hearing this, I feel a much deeper respect for you." "I understand what you've been through," Alexander said, his eyes full of sincerity. "You work hard, and you deserve better working conditions. We will provide proper tools, better insurance, and a fair reward system. I will not let you suffer any longer." The meeting became emotional as Alexander continued to share the company's plans for improvement. He didn't just speak about increasing benefits for the workers, but also proposed the creation of a scholarship fund to help the families of employees access education. "We're not just building a company, we're building a community," he said, his voice filled with inspiration. "A strong company must always know how to care for and develop its people." Tony stood up, his eyes filled with appreciation. "You've truly changed how we view the company. Not everyone cares about us like this. What you've said isn't just a promise. We can feel your sincerity and determination." After the meeting, Alexander continued to implement the important decisions he had made. A month later, the company began rolling out reforms, including providing proper tools for the workers, improving insurance and benefits, and revising the bonus policy to ensure workers were properly recognized. Additionally, the scholarship fund was established, helping employees' families access better education. "We cannot stand at the top and forget those who helped us get there," Alexander said during a press conference as the company began to implement the changes. "True success comes from taking care of the people who work tirelessly to achieve these results." But the change didn't stop at the company. Alexander's actions and decisions inspired the entire workforce, helping them realize their worth and that the company truly cared about their personal development. Alexander became not only a successful CEO in building the company, but also a leader who knew how to share and create meaningful change. "The most important thing I learned from this undercover journey is the power of listening and empathy," Alexander shared in a final interview. "A good CEO doesn't just stand at the top, but knows how to stand alongside the people who helped him reach that position." Success is not only measured by revenue, but by the emotional connection and bond you create with your team. With these changes, Brightline Systems became not only a financially strong company, but also one that truly cared for its people, creating a work environment where every employee felt safe, recognized, and able to grow. Alexander knew that the road ahead would be long, but he was ready to continue the journey, alongside those who had contributed to the success of the company. After a long period of facing challenges and observing the employees within the company, Alexander made pivotal decisions to transform Brightline Systems from within. The reforms on labor tools, insurance, bonus policies, and the scholarship fund not only helped the workers feel recognized, but also strengthened the bond between the leadership and the workforce. Alexander had learned an important lesson about the value of people and the importance of care in the workplace, and now he was determined to apply this to the company. But the story didn't end with these reforms. Alexander understood that true change doesn't come just from decisions. It comes from creating a work environment filled with empathy and understanding. It was a long process, not something that could be achieved in a few months, but rather a cultural shift within the company where every employee felt the care and respect of the organization. With the changes implemented, Brightline Systems became a company not only strong financially, but also an organization where every employee felt they had value. Alexander began to spend more time attending meetings with employees, working directly on job sites, and listening to the problems they were facing. He was no longer just a CEO from afar. He became the one closest to his team. "I need to work alongside everyone, not just make decisions from the office," Alexander thought as he toured new projects. He decided to host more direct meetings with workers where they could share any difficulties without fear of being judged. "We are a family, and I want each person in this family to feel valued." These changes not only made the company stronger financially, but also made Alexander proud of what he had accomplished. The company now had a better work environment where employees were not only guaranteed financial security but also emotional well-being. And more importantly, he knew that Brightline Systems was no longer just a construction company. It had become a true community. Alexander took pride in looking back on his journey, from being a powerful CEO to becoming someone much closer to his team. He understood that there was still much work to be done, but with the decisions and changes he had made, he believed Brightline Systems would continue to grow strong, not just in revenue, but in people. He had truly created a company where every employee felt proud to be a part of it. "Success doesn't just come from the numbers, it comes from the people behind those numbers," Alexander said in a final interview. "I will never forget the lessons I've learned from all of you. You are the reason I became the CEO I am today." With these changes, Brightline Systems not only had a brighter future, but also became a symbol of caring for people in today's business world.